recorded and is subject to monitoring. Hang up to decline the call or to accept, dial 5 now. If you wish to block any future call.
Hi, Mr. Brown. Can you hear the birds chirping? We're walking the dog.
No, not from here I can't.
Oh.
Hey, I figured tonight, but I want to talk about the IRS and clear that up.
All right, you go for it. You're on.
All right. This is regarding the jurisdiction. I'm going to start this off with about a director of the Internal Revenue Service, Stephen Miller. Former director of the Internal Revenue Service admitted at a congressional hearing that the taxes collected by the IRS are not mandatory, but are voluntary. When questioned at the House Ways and Means Committee hearing on May 2013, Mr. Miller told House Representative Devin Nunes that America's tax system is voluntary. When Nunes remarked for clarification that the U.S. tax code is a voluntary system, Miller said, agreed. House Representative Xavier Becerra commented that the use of the IRS is kept as a public confidence in the system scheme to keep Americans paying money to the IRS. Miller confirmed this is so. This testimony of Steve Miller is in direct opposition to testimony given by the Internal Revenue Service and the Department of Justice. And keep that in mind. Remember, the Department of Justice. In my particular case with my wife back in 2007 in January, the Internal Revenue Service orchestrated our entire case because they knew that we were about to expose just this information as a United States Constitution Ranger. That is why the court system in New Hampshire disallowed all of our evidence and all of our witnesses. We had 26 witnesses to bring forth, denied. We had over 100 different exhibits in evidence regarding just the Internal Revenue Service and the cartel within the United States corporate government in D.C. and how it operates. All of that was suppressed, so they had to fabricate an entire new case against my wife and I, and of course the other gentleman got involved by instigating the situation and creating the situation that happened, in fact, to the point where we ended up with 508 months. However, to confirm that the Internal Revenue Service is not a lawful organization by their own words and by their own laws out of Washington, D.C., in 1939, Exhibit A, it happened on February 10th, 1939. We tell everyone to look at Exhibit A. It is a copy of the Internal Revenue Service, February 10th, 1939, under House Resolution 2762, Public Law Number 1, Chapter 2, Act, Section 4. It's the following. All such laws and parts of laws codified herein, to the extent that relate exclusively to internal revenue, are repealed. Repeat, they were repealed at that date in May of 1939, effective except as provided in Section 5. Okay, let's look at Section 5. This is double speak that they do constantly in the law, so people get confused, but we aren't confused. Continuance of existing law, it says under Section 5. Any provision of law in force on the 2nd day of January 1939, corresponding to a provision contained in the Internal Revenue title, shall remain in force until the corresponding provision under such title takes effect. You've got to review that several times. What they're saying here is that it was repealed the day before. But it was repealed, it's no longer existent, so they're going to put it in a standby kind of a status situation so it never exists again, but it still exists, they're saying. It doesn't exist. They ended it right there in May of 1939 on February 10th. And anybody can look it up by looking at what I quoted there in House Resolution 2762. Continuance of existing law, any provision of law in force on the 2nd day of January 1939, corresponding to a provision contained in the Internal Reserve title shall remain in force until a corresponding provision under such title takes effect. It's all a scam. There is no Internal Revenue Code of 19. The code is still the same. The tax laws are still the same since 1909. It hasn't changed a bit. The only thing that might have changed a little bit slightly was the 14th Amendment back in that day. However, what everyone needs to understand is that labor cannot be taxed. The tax that they have out there is an excise tax, meaning it's a tax on manufactured goods, products, and stuff like that, and profit from business. But only the business profit can be taxed. The labor cannot be taxed. Crystal clear, again and again. I'm going to read you a few quick paragraphs here in case law, okay? This here is regarding compensation for labor, which is an income. That's the title of it. Congress has taxed income, not compensation. Connor versus U.S. 303 F. Sup. 1187. That was in 1969. And it states, income within the meaning of the 16th Amendment and the Revenue Act means gain. And in such connection, gain means profit. Only profit can be taxed. Proceeding from property severed from capital, however invested or employed in coming in, received or drawn by the taxpayer, or a separation use, benefit, and disposal. Another one. The claim that salaries, wages, and compensation for personal services are to be taxed is in its entirety must be returned by the individual who has performed the services which produced the gain is without support, either in the language of the Act or in the decisions of the courts construing it. Again, labor can't be taxed by the court. That was in the Lucas versus Earl case, 281 U.S.
This call is from a federal prison.
1930. There's about 10 of them here. I'm going to send this off to you anyway. There's about 10 pages of this whole thing, of this information, which is condensed, compacted, and very informative. Now, all of our cases between Elaine, myself, and young men, the fact that we knew this information back in 2007 at the court, but the U.S. Marshals don't care. They walk around blind. But a couple little points I want to make known to you folks. The Internal Revenue Service is an agency that is owned by the Crown Temple out of London, England. They also own, the Crown Temple out of London, England, owns our Treasury. The Treasury is not paid for by our government. It's paid for by the World Bank out of West Switzerland. These are high points that everybody better pay attention to. We don't have a working government of the United States at this time, as I said to you a couple weeks ago. We have a corporation that was created I believe it was in February of 1861 when the Congress declared sine die without day to ever open up the government under the Republic again. Since then, these attorneys who are owned by the Crown Temple out of England as well. The entire Bar Association is franchised by the Crown Temple out of England. Oops. They're the enemy. They have been our enemies for 150 years before the Civil War, and now they're supposed to be our friends too. Well, it's not England that's the enemy. It's not the king. It's the Crown. The Crown is a private organization of Eastern European bankers out of the Rothschild family. That's of record. Anybody can look it up. It's easy enough to find. Some of your listeners are people who you get letters from and stuff.
This call is from a federal prison.
So what I'm going to do is keep explaining to you how our so-called government works. We don't have one. We have a corporation. It might as well be McDonald's or Walmart that's running Washington, D.C. at this time. But understand the power behind that. If they look at the charter, the Magna Charter of 1215, they will see with the treaty that was done with Pope Innocent and King John that the Vatican believes that they own the United States government. And on record, the United States Inc. is what's controlling Washington, D.C. at this time, which is the Vatican. That sounds crazy? It isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy fact. It's treason in the highest degree. Everybody had better pay attention here because they've already lost their country. Now it's just a matter of how these bankers and lawyers, attorneys, okay, are going to make it happen. Now the entire Bar Association has already been filed charges for me on a quiet cam action once, and I backed off on it because I found out that in order for me to be able to file charges against them, I have to be an American national, which I thought I already was. I am not a U.S. citizen, which is a corporate citizen since the Civil War. Look at this. Look at the Constitution. It says it right in there. Prior to the 14th Amendment, it was uppercase C for citizen. After the 14th Amendment in the Constitution, it is lowercase c, slave, citizen, slave of the corporation. I've given you a mouthful, a lot to think about it for now, but it goes on and on and on. I get wound up about this stuff every single day because that's all I'm doing is reading this stuff. I'm starting to get a little bit jaded. How's it going on your side?
So far, so good. I can't complain. I'm not in prison.
Yeah, I know. This whole little different kind of hell, for sure. And it never changes. It seems to be getting worse in here. We still have no medical at all. It's done. I've been denied medical since I've been here. I've been trying to get the proper medical, which is proper nutrition, which can't get it. Nutrition here is mostly all starch, which causes celiac disease, diabetes, irritable bowel syndrome, malabsorption, and half a dozen other illnesses. And my body is slowly breaking down because I can't get enough proper food. I'm not the only one. A lot of people in here. I offered in June of last year when I got here to help them cure all their patients of diabetes. And I've been having a running battle with that with staff here, but it's not the staff's fault. They have to do what the central control tells them to do. But in the meantime, people are getting sicker and dying little by little, more and more, losing toes and fingers, toes and feet and legs and shit, stuff. It's incredible.
I heard that the transsexuals can get their hormones, though. They can get all their drugs.
That is correct. The transsexual can get their breasts enlarged, and they can get all kinds of other shit. We have a couple here right now that are going through that. Yet I can't even get a little enema bulb. And that aggravates me.
That's terrible. Can we send you any books? Is there anything you need?
There are a couple of books that I would like to get. One of them, I already put the request in. I hope somebody might be sending it to me, was that chemtrail thing about, I forgot what it was now. I'll send it a quick email. I'll think about it probably later on.
Okay, good.
A couple of things that, yeah, go ahead.
Well, it was really good to hear from you today, and I think what you have to say is resonating with a lot of people, and it's catching steam.
Well, and hey, Mr. Brown, I didn't get a chance to listen, but I'll get a chance to catch up, but I just want to say that we appreciate you, and our prayers are with you, and I pray to God works a mighty miracle to get you and Elaine and Daniel and Jason out of there. It's absolutely terrible. I mean, a lot of people that speak the truth that you speak, the government has put a target on them, and they end up in prison.
We have to stop saying the government. There is no government.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely no government at all in this country, whether it's state, county, city, town, or because they're all incorporated. They already gave up. They all gave up on the republic. They're not even running as a democracy. It's just a pure corporation. Yeah. Every single judge is an administrator of the bankruptcy, which means they can't even operate as a government anyway because they're bankrupt. So they're operating as administrators, the courts are, for the bankrupt United States Corporation called United States Inc. and United States Inc.
That's a very good point. No, that's a very good point, and it's just absolutely terrible. We're going to trust in the Lord that He's going to have a plan for you and your wife and Jason and Daniel, and we pray that the evildoers with the United States Inc., we pray that Lord holds them accountable for the wickedness they've done.
Well, thank you. But the papacy, remember, the papacy is no longer a creature of God or of Jesus. The Catholic Church is. As a matter of fact, Mother Teresa was a wonderful, she's the other half of the Catholic Church. But the papacy are all criminals, and I can't see any difference. I mean, it's crystal clear there for anyone who just read the information clearly and don't take sides. Just read the information that we give you here. We give you plenty of it to keep you busy for 6 months. each call.
That's right.
All right, we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, God bless you, Ed.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, that was Ed Brown, and it's absolutely a miracle that we're getting calls from him and able to put out his voice. I pray that you do take the time to look up his address on yearofjubilee.com. Go find Elaine's address on yearofjubilee.com along with Jason and Daniel. And if you'll find some time to write all 4 of them a letter, I'm sure they would very much appreciate it. Thank you for your time.